News is your local election headquarters. Tonight, live, the 2022 Democratic primary governor debate.
We are coming to you live right now from Rhode Island College, just 1 week away from Rhode Island's primary election. That's when voters will decide the Democratic nominee in the race for governor. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Shannon Heggie. Tonight, you'll hear from 4 candidates looking for your vote on Election Day, and we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's turn things over to your moderators for tonight, 12 News reporters Tim White and Ted Nesi. And Tim's going to kick things off with a look at the ground rules for tonight's debate. Tim?
Thank you, Shannon, and welcome everybody to the Nazarian Center for the Performing Arts at Rhode Island College. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News politics editor Ted Nesi. Now, each candidate will have an opportunity to give a 1-minute closing statement at the end of this debate. And the candidates are, from left to right on your screen, Matt Brown. Mr. Brown is a former Rhode Island Secretary of State. This is his second run for governor. Helena Foulkes. Ms. Foulkes was previously a top executive at CVS. This is her first run for elected office. Nellie Gorbea. Ms. Gorbea is Rhode Island's current Secretary of State. She was elected in 2014 and re-elected in 2018. And Dan McKee. Mr. McKee took over as governor of Rhode Island in March 2021. He was previously lieutenant governor and before that, mayor of Cumberland. Now, candidates, as you know, there is no strict format to tonight's debate. We're looking for an open and honest discussion of the issues. If you're taking too long to answer the question or not answering at all, we will jump in. Let's begin. Candidates, I want to start with what happened just over 24 hours ago. A tremendous amount of rain fell yesterday afternoon, completely shutting down I-95 and Route 10. In a summer of drought, there has only been significant rainfall twice, and both times those storms led to a highway shutdown. Mr. McKee, you urged motorists to stay off the road after they were already stuck on the highway, and motorists encountered DOT signs that were still flashing Labor Day messages rather than letting people know the highway was closed. What do you say to people who think your administration did not act quickly enough?
Well, first of all, everybody's safe, and that was the most important thing in any form of a crisis or an emergency like that. Our EMA, our state police, as well as the DOT, were very much on top of it. And for me, I've had experience at this. I was on conversations with them, making sure they were talking to the local EMAs. Snowstorm, for instance, the largest snowfall in the history of the state of Rhode Island in January. Only people remember that was the day that Tom Brady didn't retire because it was managed so well. And millions of dollars are going to be recovered there. So in terms of dealing with emergencies or weather, I've had experience going through snowstorms, hurricanes, and so my feeling is, though, that was handled well. And I want to thank the workers coming out on Labor Day, responding to an emergency, and in a way that I believe that we're very fortunate.
But Mr. McKee, these meteorologists had predicted that a flash flood could occur at some point in the afternoon. The snowstorm you talked about was something everybody saw on the radar coming in for a while. Do you feel like you could have done more knowing that that flooding was a potential in the forecast?
The rain was forecasted. Did you know that 11 inches of rain were going to fall in an hour in the city of Cranston? No. So yes, they responded the way they should under the circumstances. They cleared the roads as quickly as they could be cleared. It was an inconvenience, but no one got hurt, and no one had a health issue that emergencies you should be following. So yes, could you predict 11 inches in Cranston, or 7 or 8 inches in an hour, 1 month's worth of rain in any area of the state? And down in Newport, no rain. Narragansett, no rain, right? So the response there with the DOT, the EMA, and as well as the Rhode Island State Police was excellent.
Well, to your point, Mr. McKee, I'm going to fold you in. Ms. Foulkes, you obviously disagree. You said Mr. McKee's response was, quote, government incompetence, going on to say, quote, after 18 months in office, Governor McKee should know how to handle a rainstorm, and he failed. Ms. Foulkes, you and I both know that was not just a rainstorm. Why is it Mr. McKee's fault that an extreme amount of rain fell in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, the weather is absolutely not the governor's fault. I totally agree with that, and I really appreciate what everyone did to try to solve the problem in the moment. There were two real issues that were missing yesterday. One is we didn't have a plan. And just 2 weeks ago, we had a major rainstorm. We could have learned from that experience and planned ahead on drainage and how to deal with it. Number two, very poor communication. To your point, we knew people were stuck on that highway at 3 in the afternoon for hours. And the first we had a press conference on Zoom was the governor leading it at 6 p.m. This was far too late. He should have been warning all of us much earlier. The signs on the roadways could have been much better. I heard
Wouldn't
from
you rather have the governor trying to fix the problem rather than hopping on TV right away?
I think you can walk and chew gum. I think you can absolutely be solving the problem and be visible and clear to people that there is a problem, out with people and making it happen. This was far too late, and people suffered. They were in their cars trapped with children, dogs, not knowing what was going on, and that was a real mistake. I do not blame him for the weather. That was quite unfortunate. What I blame him for was the response to it.
No, hold on. Ms. Gorbea, same question to you. Like Ms. Folks, you were critical of how Mr. McKee handled the flooding, tweeting in part, Governor McKee and his RIDOT director appear content to brush off their responsibility for making sure this keeps from happening in the future. So I guess I'll ask you, if you become governor, are you going to fire RIDOT director Peter Alviti?
Look, the issue here is climate change is real. Our climate is changing, and this administration has not done anything to really take care of that problem. This is not just a one-day event. And by the way, my parents were stuck in '95 for 3.5 hours during that flood storm with no indication. We had no information as to what was going on and when could they get out. So I take this very seriously. I know the lack of communication because we experienced it first and foremost. But this is not just about a rainstorm. This is not about a one-time event. Thank goodness for the people who are our state employees and our public safety people who were there trying to get it done. This is about a failure of leadership in dealing with climate change issues. We need to reorganize how we handle things out of the Department of Transportation, the Department of Environmental Management. The governor has been in place for 18 months. The places that flooded in Cranston and Johnston, we've known that they flood. There has been no action to use the federal dollars to take care of storm waters when they're going to happen. And so that is a failure of leadership, and that's what we saw come to a head yesterday.
Jim, I'll answer that
Mr.
question.
Brown?
I said months ago that as governor, I will fire Transportation Director Alviti. And we saw the reason why he needs to go yesterday. I was outraged to hear him say at a press conference that we are, quote, at the mercy of Mother Nature. The flood was caused by the climate crisis. The climate crisis is caused by the fossil fuel industry and the politicians that prop them up. So I will replace Director Alviti with a new Director of Transportation who understands that the climate crisis is real, understands that we can and must take urgent action to address it. That includes ensuring that our infrastructure is safe and reliable, expanding urban green space, investing in public transit, and higher capacity stormwater.
Yeah, that's great, but all of those things would take a long time to have an effect on climate change, and probably your opponents agree with much of what you just said. So if you were governor yesterday, what would you have done differently than Governor McKee?
Well, I think we've covered all that. What I'm saying, though, is that there's a deeper problem. And I'm answering the question that you put to Secretary Gorbea, and I don't think any of my opponents on the stage agree with me on this, which is that Director Alviti has to go. The problem is at the top. We have someone at the top who does not understand and take seriously the climate crisis, and so we're going to need to replace Director Alviti, which I will do, with someone who will take it seriously, who will take urgent action. We also need to shut down the polluting industries in the flood-prone zone in the Port of Providence. We're one more serious storm away from one of those facilities being damaged and chemicals, toxic chemicals, spreading across the city of Providence. And we have to get to the root of the problem, which is the climate crisis itself, with a Green New Deal to shut down the fossil fuel industry and make this the first state in the country to run 100% on clean energy.
All right, I don't want to litigate an extreme weather event for too long here. We only have an hour, but I feel like you, Mr. McKee, have responded to some of the shots that you took there. But one I do want you to respond to, particularly from Ms. Gorbea. She said that you have not done enough to address climate change in Rhode Island. Please respond, 30 seconds.
There's no governor that's done more, right? Signed the act on climate. Have signed the act, the bill that's going to make us a renewable, 100% renewable by 2033. I put in a legislation to create 1,000 kilowatts of energy to procure that. That's going to electrify over 500,000 homes. The work that has been done, and then back to the work that's been done by the DOT and Direct LBD. $20 million is being invested in the work right now every year on drainage, as well as the infrastructure dollars that are going to. I took $100 million from the surplus and applied it towards $100 million and applied it towards $400 million of federal dollars for road improvements, which there'll be engineering in there for drainage as well. So yes, the question was asked, what have I done? I've done more in 18 months than any governor has, and we've worked with the General Assembly to make
15 seconds, Ms. Gorbea.
Look, signing bills is great, but then you have to implement it. And as the candidate who's received endorsements by Clean Water Action and Climate Action Rhode Island, clearly there is not the kind of faith that we need in the leadership of our governor to be able to deal with climate change or short-term problems like the flooding yesterday.
All right, candidates, we want to cover a lot of ground tonight.
Yeah, I'll just add, though, that we also activated the EC4 committee as well, and they're meeting monthly with partners around the state on the environmental issues.
All right. Candidates, let's turn to the economy. It's no secret Rhode Island's economy has lagged for a long time, especially compared with Massachusetts. CNBC ranks the state 45th out of 50 for business friendliness. The GDP shrank 0.6% during the first quarter of this year, and only 89% of the jobs lost during the pandemic have been regained 2 years later. So I want to ask each of you a simple question. Ms. Folks, I'll start with you. What would you identify as the single biggest thing holding back Rhode Island's economy today?
So it's hard to identify one, and you're right, all those numbers are really heartbreaking, because it's very important we have a thriving economy so our children and grandchildren can have great futures here. I would point to small businesses. You know, we have a state where we're overwhelmed with bureaucracy and red tape. I talk to small business leaders every day who say, eliminate it and let us grow. And I'll give you one example. There's a guy I met who has 3 restaurants, 2 in Pawtucket and 1 in Worcester. And he said to me, Helena, when I opened my second restaurant in Pawtucket, I had to go to 13 different websites and locations to get all the paperwork and permits to open my restaurant. When I went to Worcester, I had one-stop shop concierge service. And I think to myself, when I hear stories like that, we sometimes overcomplicate what needs to happen. We can make things work in Rhode Island, get big things done, and liberate small business owners so that they can hire more people and really build a thriving economy.
All right, Ms. Folks says small business. Ms. Gorbea, same question. What is the single biggest thing you would identify holding back the state's economy?
It's the fact that we don't have an economy that's more equitable and just, and that's focusing on the businesses that are here now. Look, we have like the most amazing state in that we have sectors like marine, renewable energy, hospitality and tourism, manufacturing. We have so many businesses and business types that we should be investing in to grow into regional, national, international companies. But instead, we have this shiny object kind of economic development where we're looking for that one big fix. It's not. It's about fixing the housing crisis. It's about education, and it's about addressing climate change while investing in our Rhode Island-based
But would you
businesses.
pick among those, you have to make priorities as governor. Would you pick among those as the biggest challenge?
Right now, the biggest challenge facing our economy is housing. And I'm going to be the housing governor. Because right now, people can't afford to live here. And that's really strangling so many other things. Housing is foundational to education. A kid that moves twice in a school year is not able to recover. And it's also housing is also foundational to people's health. How healthy, where you live, definitely affects your health. And finally, it affects climate change in that how we heat and cool our homes is what's affecting our climate. And I am going to be the governor that fixes this. We can, by the way, grow a great home building economy in our state doing this work. And I'm going to make us a regional leader.
All right, and Mr. Brown, same question. What do you see when you look out around the economy as the biggest hurdle holding the state back?
That people don't have enough money to get by. And the reason is that the costs of the basic things people need, like housing and health care, have gone up literally hundreds of %, while people's wages have stayed essentially the same. And that means it just doesn't add up for lots and lots of Rhode Islanders. They just can't get by. They can't make a life here for themselves or for their children. So as governor, we'll come at it from both sides. I'll raise the minimum wage to $19 an hour to put more money in people's pockets. And we'll lower the cost of things like housing and health care by building tens of thousands of truly affordable homes, capping statewide annual rent increases at 4%, and enacting a Medicare for all style healthcare system that takes the profit making out of it. The root of the problem is that the people in power are not up there working for everyday people. They're working for large corporations and the very rich. Just recently, Governor McKee gave $60 million.
We're gonna talk about the soccer stadium, so hold off on that for a moment, please. Hold off for me, Mr.
I'm not
Brown.
going to talk about Tidewater.
Okay, what are you going to talk about?
Well, what I'm going to say is
Briefly.
that it doesn't have to be that way. These are policy decisions. We can make different decisions. With different leadership, we can end the corporate giveaways, and we can ensure that everyone can afford to get by and give their kids
Let me
a good
just ask you
life
briefly before I go to Mr. McKee. You mentioned a $19 minimum wage. I know there'll be some people watching at home, maybe they run a small business and they worried that their balance sheet wouldn't be able to handle that. What do you say to someone, which is not to say people don't deserve $19, but they worry about being able to afford that?
I think one of the best things we can do to support small businesses here is to raise the minimum wage to $19 an hour. The situation we have now is that because people's costs are so high and their wages have stayed the same, at the end of the month, once people have paid their mortgage or their rent, the utility bill, their health care bill, their grocery bill, their child care bill, they don't have any money left to go to the corner store, their local small business, and buy something. Raising wages is one of the good investments we can make in our small business economy.
Mr. McKee, same question. What do you see as the number one thing that holds back Rhode Island economically?
The number one thing, and we're working on it, is said JOBS, jobs. That's the main thing in raising people's incomes. Matt and I actually agree on raising incomes. We don't agree how to do it. We do it. The fact of the matter is that we have the lowest unemployment rate the state has ever had in its history, and there's still good paying jobs available. Fidelity, we're investing in the fisheries down in Gallery. Quonset for offshore wind in East Providence. Superman building, we're going to put people to work. The convention center, the Dunk, or new AMP, I guess that's what it's going to be. Electric boat is still hiring. Tidewater is going to be constructing good paying jobs. Education, $300 million for schools, almost $200 million for Rhode Island College, CCRI, and URI. These are all good paying jobs. And the budget that we were able to pass with the General Assembly and the budget that I submitted, $250 million for housing, and as well a small business friendly budget article in the budget that I got 6 to 8 of those things passed, and we're going to do it again next year.
So are you saying the single biggest thing holding back the state economically is a lack of jobs or a lack of workers to take the jobs?
No, right now the jobs is the path towards a good economy. We no longer have to be a state first in and last out of economic downturns. Today, we lead the Northeast on an economic recovery with Moody's 30 indexes. We're number 2 in the country. We no longer need to be the first and last out of these economic downturns. The budget that has been passed, that I've signed, that I've submitted, has 3 to 5 years of economic growth in that budget. And the best defense against a economic downturn is JOBS. And the jobs are there right now, and we're going to make sure that we train them up, $30 million for job training. And we have set the plan. It's in motion. We have momentum like the state has never seen before, and we're going to take advantage of it.
We're going to have to move on soon, so I saw Ms. Folk's hand first, and we'll get you in, Ms. Gorbea.
Yeah, I'm honestly not following what he's talking about in terms of this, but I will just say that it's really important that we have a healthy climate where people feel that they can grow their businesses. And I think under Governor's leadership, there's a cloud over this state. Reputational issues are really hurting us. We were one of a handful of states that taxed the PPP loans. We also have Secretary Gorbea, who's proposed raising taxes on small businesses by another %. And so these two issues send a very loud signal to businesses that are here and out of state that this is not a place that's open for business. So we need to change the climate, improve it for businesses so they can hire more people and help all of us.
All right, I promised Ms. Gorbea time before we go on.
I was going to agree, I was going to amend my statement before that perhaps the one thing holding our economy back is our current leadership and Governor McKee.
Okay, well, we'll move on, Tim.
All right. I want to ask each of you about criticisms you have faced over the course of this campaign. Mr. McKee, this topic has come up a lot, as you know, ILO Group. There's a federal and state investigation into the controversial education contract your administration awarded to consulting firm ILO Group. They're looking into how the deal came together. Now, your office has repeatedly refused to tell us if your administration has been subpoenaed as part of this probe. So please answer it now. Have you or your administration received a subpoena?
So I've answered the question about myself. No. Now, as far as the situation in terms of that contract or that ILO agreement, I'm happy to talk about that in more detail if you want.
Okay, but has your administration received a subpoena?
My administration is dealing with it in terms of internally, in terms of the fact that we have someone that's served 5 administrations in our legal.
Is
you
that
can
a
give
yes?
them a call.
Is that a yes?
No, that's not. I'm not making comment on that. I'm not going to make comment on that. You can. That'll be handled internally.
Do you think the
by
people
legal.
of Rhode
I've
Island
answered
have
the
a right
question
to
of-
know? Have a
I've
right
answered
to
the
know?
question about myself, right? No. The answer is no.
Do you think the people of Rhode Island have a right to know whether or not your administration has been subpoenaed by the federal government?
They have a right to know from me whether I have or not, and I said no.
You're not responsible for your entire administration?
Of course I am.
Okay.
The way that it's being handled right now is the way it should be handled, by somebody that has experience relative to the issues, and they don't have to do it. And the fact of the matter is that the explanation that was given, which through a letter, you have it, Tim, the reason that was given, I think is substantial, it's appropriate.
You have defended throughout the campaign your handling of the ILO contract, but if it wasn't all that bad, how come the General Assembly passed a law to overhaul the bidding process because they felt it was abused? And in fact, Mr. McKee, you signed it. If nothing was wrong, then why agree to change the law that handles these public bids?
Well, because I filed a state statute. And the reason it got changed is because we did file a state statute in the procurement process that went underway for the Department of Administration. Remember, I want to just reflect a little bit about where we were on March 2nd, 2021. We were in the state of emergency like we've never seen before. We didn't know whether people were going to get vaccinated. We had 90,000 doses on the shelf when I showed up. We're #1 in vaccination right now. We didn't know whether the economy was going to open up. We didn't know whether people were going to lose their homes, lose their jobs, lose their businesses. Right now, we lead the Northeast in an economic recovery, and we didn't know about a safe opening of our schools. So my urgency there was big. I happen to be brought in as a governor during the largest state of emergency in the history of the state of Rhode Island. I was responsible for the health and welfare for everybody in the state, including the students that went to the schools. We followed the procurement strategy. The procurement came back with a recommendation. We accepted the recommendation, and then we brought on a ILO group as well as somebody to do the higher ed, the best higher ed opening in the country, I believe, as well as our schools.
All right, I'm going to fold in Mr. Brown here. You have repeatedly criticized Mr. McKee on this topic, even recently equating him to the late Buddy Cianci and suggesting Mr. McKee could be indicted. There is no public indication, nor has anyone reported that Mr. McKee is the target of this federal investigation. So it seems your goal is to throw bombs for your political benefit. Is that really responsible for someone that wants to be governor of Rhode Island?
I think.
Please.
So the FBI is not interested in going after staff members. They're interested in people in power and holding them accountable. It wasn't I who decided that there was something that needed to be looked into by the FBI. It was the United States government. And they did make that decision months ago, and they have spent a lot of time investigating Governor McKee's administration. So they think there is something here that needs to be looked at. Governor McKee knew when he decided to run for office that his administration was under criminal investigation by the FBI. I do think he owes it to the people of the state to tell them whether or not, if he's indicted in office, he will resign.
What evidence do you have, though, that this investigation, I mean, you drop if Mr. McKee is indicted. There is no, again, indication that he is the target of this investigation. What evidence do you have that is in fact the case? And I want to remind the audience that this is a live studio and we will take time away from your candidate when you applaud. Mr. Brown.
Well, as I said, Tim, the FBI is not really interested in going after staff members. They're interested in rooting out corruption at the top, the people in power. That's what they spend their time on. The FBI has got a lot on their hands in this country, as we know. They're not going to waste their time unless they think there is a serious problem and unless they think it's coming from the top. And 1/3 of FBI investigations, more than 1/3, end in indictment. So it's
that means 2/3 don't.
The
majority don't.
And if Rhode Islanders want to take that chance, that there's better than a 1/3 chance that we've got a governor in office who may be indicted in the coming months. If they want to take that chance, I would not support that.
Before I go to Ms. Folks, Mr. McKee, would you like 30 seconds to respond to any of that, or do you want me to move on?
Give me the last say. I'll listen to what everybody says. But clearly, I should have the last say here with these
Okay,
false
we'll see.
attacks.
I'm actually going to
these false attacks that are happening here, right? In terms of, and quite frankly, a certain amount of misrepresentation. Happy to hear from the other two opponents, and I'd like to have.
Well, I'm going to change the topic for you, Ms.
Well, I'd
Folks.
like to add
Actually,
one-
well,
I'd like
I'm
to
going to
add-
ask you a question first. It's a different
fine.
critique for you. When you were the head of Hudson's Bay Company, you foreshadowed employee layoffs by calling it, quote, low-hanging fruit on a conference call with investors. Look, even a reporter for Bloomberg covering that call said the quote was probably a poor choice of words. In retrospect, do you regret framing it that way?
What I described as the low-hanging fruit was really the fact that this company was burning $1 billion in cash when I arrived, and there was huge opportunity to invest in technology, to invest in our frontline employees so they had the tools that they could use to serve people. We had big decisions to make, and those were hard decisions, but I'm really proud of giving the teams the resources they need. We lifted our customer service scores. We turned the business around.
Did people lose their jobs?
We got it from $1 billion of cash that we were burning to cash flow neutral, and we were able to really successfully reposition the company.
But did people lose their jobs in the
Some
wake of
people
those?
lost their jobs, but the lion's share of people did not lose their jobs. In fact, the people were really pleased that we set the company back on track. When I arrived, it was a mess of a company. It had been put together by real estate investors, and what we did is we stabilized it and we set it up so people could have really good futures.
Ms. Gorbea,
I would like to follow up, though.
I'll give you 30
because Give
seconds.
me a chance on the subpoena issue.
Sure.
I would not want to prejudge an indictment. Only the FBI and the Attorney General will be able to tell on the indictment whether that's relevant. But I do think it's very fair that the governor answer the question on whether his administration received a subpoena, because this is something the people of Rhode Island deserve to know. Even Donald Trump has released his subpoena. So, Governor, I do call on you to do it. I think it's quite relevant in this election that everyone know the answer to that question.
Mr. McKee.
I'll end with this.
Okay.
I know what I did and didn't do. Every decision I made since I've been governor has been in the best interest of the people in the state of Rhode Island and no one else.
All right, Ms. Gorbea, you're getting heat from your opponents about a mishap with the new touchscreen voting machine. Some Spanish language ballots had candidate names from the 2018 election. Now look, it's been fixed and the vendor admits it was their fault, but at a time when there's such distrust in elections, your campaign says your staff waited an entire day to inform you of such a critical issue. Were they afraid to tell you about this, or is that standard operating procedure in your office? What happened there?
No, so here's the thing. First of all, let me say that as somebody who for 8 years as your Secretary of State has fought tirelessly to make sure that elections are not only fair and accurate, but that we protect voting rights in this state, I'm very proud of the advances that we've made. I was outraged by the mistakes that were admitted to by ES&S and the lack of oversight that the Board of Elections displayed over the work that was being done by a vendor. When I was told about this event, it was literally within 24 hours. So my staff...
Is that okay with you, 24 hours?
No, so here's the problem. So this is not happening in my office. It is happening in a different agency. There's a vendor involved. And so my staff, knowing that I'm going to ask them about 25 different questions, gathered all the information, and then within 24 hours, actually got the information to me. And within that same day, I drafted a letter to the Board of Elections Chairwoman, Diane Medeiros, asking for full transparency to the public. I went ahead and asked for them to do an audit of the machines, and I made sure that the public knew about it by informing the WPRI investigative team, because in the end, transparency is the best method to convey trust in a system.
All right, before we move on to Ted, just a follow-up question to you. Since, right before we walked into this auditorium, it emerged that a Providence candidate, in fact, your own former Deputy Secretary of State, his name was misspelled. He's running for Providence mayor. So, and this happened after these corrections were supposed to have taken place.
Yeah, no, again, I am outraged because I was assured by both the vendor and the Board of Elections that they had taken all measures to check things out. Now, clearly, we need a full independent audit into what is going on in terms of reviewing those machines.
Can I just say, this is the Chief Elections Officer of the state of Rhode Island, ultimately responsible for fast, fair, and accurate elections. It is not okay to hide by all these different issues that she's raising. She said just last week that we could trust her to have safe elections. We now have become a laughingstock in this country for a place where we can't trust our voting machines. And this is not okay from the person who is the Chief
15 seconds, and we are moving on, Ms. Gorbea.
Completely disagree with that characterization. If anything, I have acted forcefully to make sure that we have trust and transparency in this election. I have moved for solutions to be addressed by the Board of Elections. And I stand by my record over 8 years of making sure that Rhode Islanders can trust their elections.
We are moving on, Ms. Folks. I want to talk about the politics of abortion and the policies on that in Rhode Island. And Ms. Gorbea, I will start with you on this. You've been running TV ads talking about your passionate support for abortion rights. But 4 years ago, you declined to endorse the pro-choice incumbent governor, Gina Raimondo, but you campaigned door-to-door to re-elect the anti-abortion incumbent House Speaker, Nick Mattiello. And this was at a time when many women representatives wanted Mattiello gone, in part because he'd dismissed the need for abortion rights legislation. Why should pro-choice voters trust you when you campaigned for Mattiello but wouldn't endorse Raimondo?
So first of all, let me say that I am an ardent supporter of abortion rights. That is a decision that every woman needs to make for herself, with whatever guidance she needs from a medical professional and her family or whoever else she needs to pull in there. Since 1989, and in fact, that's what the ad
We're not
shows.
talking about 1989. We're talking about 2018, and you campaigned for the anti-abortion House Speaker. Speak to that, please.
Yes, I have advocated, I have marched, I have testified in favor of abortion rights in this state. In 2018, I absolutely supported our governor when she went on for the general election. I stayed out of the primary. Having said that, I also went and talked to voters, which I represent all over the state, in Cranston, in Johnston, in Narragansett. I am very proud of my record. And in the end, in 2019, when Roe v. Wade was in the legislature being debated about whether or not it should be codified, I went against the wishes of the speaker and his interests.
Did you have any conversation with him at the time when you agreed to campaign for him? What did you tell him?
We had conversations about it. And I said that I supported codifying Roe v. Wade. Which is very different, by the way, than what the governor said at the time, which was that it was merely a gesture, that it would never be overturned. And here we are. And thank goodness for the women who championed this in the General Assembly and got it done.
Well, we will go to Mr. McKee in a moment, but I want to go next to Ms. Folks. Ms. Folks, you've been criticized, as you know, for giving a campaign donation to Mitch McConnell in 2014. Mr. Mattiello was a Democrat when Ms. Gorbea campaigned for him, unlike Mr. McConnell. How do you explain to Democratic primary voters who I have to believe, by and large, do not like Mitch McConnell, your decision to write a check for him at a time when he was battling President Obama?
Yeah, let me just say I do not like Mitch McConnell either, and I'm going to say something.
But you gave him money.
Yes, and I will say something politicians up here do not say. I made a mistake, okay? I wrote a check for $500 in 2014. I was part of a CBS executive group that was working on the Affordable Care Act to make sure that we kept certain elements of that alive. We needed to have support on both sides of the aisle. I regret that action. And I've said so, and I think that's something we should expect from all politicians up here.
Okay, can I just jump in there, Ted?
Go ahead. Please, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So Ms. Folks says she regrets it, but she also kind of defends it by saying she was part of this group and they had to work both sides of the aisle and they were trying to support the Affordable Care Act. Mitch McConnell was trying to kill the Affordable Care Act. Mitch McConnell said his primary agenda was to block whatever President Obama does to hurt him politically. I think we all know what really goes on with these kinds of donations. Corporate CEOs give donations to politicians who support policies that boost their profits and make them personally richer. And they do it even knowing that someone like Mitch McConnell caused a lot of harm to people in this country and to the country itself, dismantling abortion rights, dismantling workers' rights, dismantling voters' rights, and giving us the right-wing Supreme Court that we had. There is no excuse for for donating to Mitch McConnell.
So
I'll let you please, ladies and gentlemen, we will take time away from the candidates you're cheering for.
I have said that was a mistake, so I apologize. I've also, though, I want to draw a very important distinction that's not been raised yet. This governor signed a budget that effectively bans abortion on 1/3 of all women in this state. And my first action as governor will be to put in a budget which covers abortion rights and care for all women in the state, and I think that's a critical issue for women right now in Rhode Island.
Before I go to Mr. McKee on that, I want to ask you, Mr. Brown, you and your fellow Rhode Island political cooperative candidates strongly favor abortion rights in your platform. As you know, the Rhode Island Democratic Party does have a history of fielding some candidates who support abortion rights and some candidates who oppose abortion rights. If there is a voter watching tonight who's personally opposed to abortion, do you see there is room for that voter in the Democratic Party in 2022, or do you say no to them?
All I can do is tell you what I believe, and I can tell you what the platform is that I share with Senator Cynthia Mendes and all the members of the Rhode Island Political Cooperative, which is that we believe in abortion rights. End of story. And we believe in it, and we know that in this state, right now, there are tens of thousands of people who do not truly have that right because they're on Medicaid and they're banned from getting an abortion, or they're on state insurance and they're banned from getting an abortion. And Governor McKee could have put it in his budget. Speaker Shekarchi and Senate President Ruggiero could have brought it to the floor, which they didn't do after Roe v. Wade fell and the legislature was still in session. They could have called a special session. They did nothing, and they left tens of thousands of people in the state without a fundamental right. And we're going to change that when Cynthia and I and all the members of the Rhode Island Political Cooperative get up there and form a new government.
Mr. McKee, your response on this? This is the equality and abortion
first,
coverage.
the donation of McConnell. The thing that disturbs me most is 1 minute after President Obama, who I supported from day one, was inaugurated, he said he was going to make that man a 4-year president. So 2014, that was 2012, because I was at the inauguration, right? So as far as the issues on the woman's right to choose, I have been consistently in favor of women's right to choose. Relative to, besides putting an executive order in to make sure that women who come to Rhode Island or providers that provide the medical procedure of abortion are protected, and as well as letters supporting, asking the General Assembly to take that legislation and put it on my desk. Letters went to them. It was very clear where my office and I stood on that. The budget issue was something that the Speaker brought up after the fact. We're going to put that in the budget this year, but we're still going to need the General Assembly to act, and I believe that they will.
Let me ask you, you mentioned letters. I asked the House for those records, and the record showed you didn't send the relevant committee a letter expressing your desire to see that bill pass until May 19th, during the final weeks of the legislative session and a busy time for the Finance Committee. Why didn't you speak out sooner if this was a priority for you?
We sent it when the hearings were being held. That's when you normally do it.
I think it's one thing.
You send it when the hearings are being held. So both the House Finance, I believe it was, and the Senate hearings, they received it when they were hearing and deciding whether they were taking it out of their committee.
Briefly, Ms. Folks,
I just want to say sending letters is not leadership. Leadership is calling people, pulling them to your office, having conversations about what it takes to get something done. I think this is a big difference between Governor McKee and myself. And as I said before, the first action I'll take is to make sure that 1/3 of women in the state do have access to abortion care.
All right, we're about 15 minutes away, believe it or not, to closing statements. So I think it's about time we do a rapid fire section here. We want to get through some topics quickly. I'm looking for 1 or 2 word answers to each of these questions. I'll change up the order. Mr. Brown, do you support or oppose a state ban on assault-style rifles like the AR-15?
Support.
Ms. Folks?
Support.
Ms.
Support.
Gorbea? Mr. McKee. All right, in November, Mr. McKee, voters in some communities will be deciding if they will allow marijuana shops in their community. You will cast a ballot in Cumberland. Will you vote to allow marijuana shops or vote against them?
Allow it.
Okay, Ms. Gorbea?
I will also vote to allow.
In North Kingstown, obviously. In Narragansett, Ms. Folks?
I will vote to allow, but I'll say I'm still think that we should consider the long-term health impacts of marijuana.
Okay, Mr. Brown, you won't be voting for it in Providence, but if you did, how would you vote for it?
In favor.
All right, Mr. Brown, I'll stick with you here. Just last week, Mr. McKee signed an executive order keeping Rhode Island in a state of emergency due to COVID-19 for at least the rest of September. As governor, would you have also kept the state of emergency in place, or would you have ended it?
Kept it.
You would have kept it. Ms. Folks?
I'm not sure on that one.
Okay. Ms. Gorbea?
I have to say, I might have kept it because of like federal funding or something else that's going on, but again, a lack of leadership and lack of communication
Okay,
with
this
people
is rapid
a
fire. Mr.
problem.
McKee, do you, I got to ask you a different question.
Well,
Hang on.
obviously I supported it because I signed
know,
it.
that's why I'm gonna-
but
that's
also-
why a different question.
we send
different
money,
question.
we send our money to Washington, and if
I get
Washington
it.
sends
I
money
get it,
back
Governor.
to us,
do you
we're going to take
expect to
every penny of it.
continue it into October or end it at the end of the month?
No, we're going to continue it as long as the funding is available, which is through the December 31st, 90% of the funding relative to COVID is going to be covered. So
All right,
we're going
candidates.
to take advantage of those dollars.
We've been getting a good response from viewers on this, so we're going to do a pop quiz on information the governor should know. We aren't looking for things down to the decimal point here,
now the
but
pressure's
just,
on.
just sort of a ballpark. Well, all right, Mr. McKee, we'll start with you. What is the total amount of general revenue in the current fiscal year's budget? General revenue.
Yeah, it's about $5.5 billion.
Okay, is Ms. Gorbea, is he right?
The overall revenue?
General
part of it?
revenue.
Not federal funds?
Not federal funds.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay, Ms. Folks?
Yeah, I think it's about $5 billion.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
It is just over $5 billion.
That's what you asked me first, Tim, you know?
Mr. Brown, we'll go out of order here. What percentage does the state pension plan have to be funded for retired state employees to get back their cost of living adjustments or COLAs?
I don't have that in my head right now, Tim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Gorbea, do you know?
No, I don't.
Ms. Folks, any
I think
idea?
it's 80%.
And Mr. McKee?
No, that's a question for the treasurer. But
Okay.
the fact that but I will, the COLA issue is one that concerns me. I will put in the budget this
Okay,
year something.
it
to
is
help address that.
80%. Ms. Folks, every October, the state releases the results of the RICAS standardized tests, and last October's results, approximately what percentage of 3rd through 8th graders were proficient in either English language arts or math? You can choose either one.
So this has been a very important part of
I
my
know.
campaign.
What's the answer?
So only 33% of kids pass their grade level reading tests and 20% in math.
All right, Ms. Gorbea, percentage ELA, percentage math?
Yeah, no, I mean, she already answered.
Is she right?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes, but understand this.
Okay, no. Mr. Brown?
No, let's understand
okay.
that those testings was done. That's a base that we're at. That's not where we have been. It's because
I
of the
understand,
COVID,
Mr.
right?
McKee.
So
Ms.
so we
Folks,
understand.
you were right, 33% for ELA, 20% for math. Final question, Ms. Gorbea. Look, you talk about yourself as being the housing candidate. According to the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, approximately what was the median price of a home in Rhode Island last month?
Last month, it would have been around almost 300,000.
Mr. Brown?
I was going to say, yeah, 250, 300.
Ms. Folks?
400,000.
And Mr. McKee?
I guess at 350.
In July, it was $410,000. Okay, Ted.
All right, game show section is over. Thank you, Tim. And now
Yes.
we'll move on. I want to ask about the $3,000 bonus checks, which have been a topic throughout the campaign. These are incentive payments that the administration has awarded to many state employees, often as part of their new union contracts. I'll start with you, Mr. Brown. You are a strong supporter of an expanded, more active state government, and you'd, of course, need a robust state workforce to implement your policies. Do you support giving these $3,000 bonus checks to state workers, and why or why not?
I mean, my view was that we needed a very different COVID policy, as you know. I was for a vaccine mandate, a much more aggressive policy to take that on, masking earlier. And so my view was we had to take all those actions, make them mandatory, and that you don't do that with, by paying out, special bonuses to certain groups and not others. And I also think we need to raise wages across the board, including for many of our public employees. For example, our teachers have a starting salary that averages $43,000 a year in this state. And that means that we've got teachers teaching class, and instead of working on their lesson plan for the next day, are going and driving an Uber shift to try to make ends meet. So I'm for raising salaries across the board for our teachers so that our starting teacher salaries are at least $60,000 a year.
All right, Ms. Folks, you've been critical of these bonuses and Governor McKee's decision to support them. Union leaders say this money is well-deserved. The workforce worked hard in the state throughout COVID. Why don't you think they deserve that money?
I believe that our workforce worked really hard, but I think this governor was not honest about them, and he flip-flopped endlessly. So if they were originally for vaccines, and then something happened and he decided he couldn't tie the vaccine to it. So then it became $3,000 bonus checks. If we needed retention money, we should have said we needed retention money. I'll use an example that really irks most people I talk to. Why did our judges need a $3,000 retention bonus for lifetime jobs?
But you know, Ms. Folks, Mr. McKee did not have power over that. The judiciary decided
but
that.
He set off a slippery slope. So this is what happened.
All right, Ms. Gorbea, you had the option of giving your staff the $3,000 bonus payments. You declined to do so. I imagine that wasn't super popular in your office. Why did you make that decision then?
Look, no, we followed, we provided them for the union employees. We did not for the non-union employees because the governor did not provide that in the budget. And I'm not about to make statements about, unfunded mandates. I believe that state workers absolutely need that they deserve the respect of an adequate salary. What happened with Governor McKee's policy is that there was no rhyme and reason. It changed many times. You don't have a leadership that communicates with people and makes it so that it doesn't become an us versus them, the haves versus the have-nots. We need leadership that brings people together. And by the way, I would already be working on establishing what is our policy for the next pandemic, for the next crisis, because it's coming. And we can't wait till we're in that strait again to come and decide, whether, frontline workers who, by the way, did an amazing job deserve a bonus payment or not, and under what conditions. That's the kind of proactive management of government that we need to have in our state.
Mr. McKee, you've received a lot of union endorsements in this campaign, and we do often hear from viewers when those are announced saying, well, it's because he gave them the $3,000 bonuses. What do you say to the voters watching at home tonight who didn't like that policy?
Well, it didn't work for me in Providence.
Oh, because you didn't get the Providence Teachers Union endorsement?
The reason that you do this, first of all, as a mayor, I negotiated 12 or 13 contracts. I showed up as a mayor and they were all out of date, just like I did when I became governor of the state of Rhode Island. All the contracts were way out of date. You use upfront dollars like that to lower long-term costs in terms of pensions and related things like that. So the percentages of the increase reflect the total package, and it was a good negotiation, just like I did making sure that Providence had a good contract before the school opened up last year. I did the same thing for these contracts. So I always made sure that contracts that I signed and negotiated as a mayor and now as a governor are fair to the taxpayers and they're fair to the people who are doing the work.
All right, I want to see if we can get through this topic in about 5 minutes. And as Ted foreshadowed, we talk about the Pawtucket Soccer Stadium now. Mr. McKee, you were the tie-breaking vote to approve $60 million in public subsidies for the soccer stadium project in Pawtucket, known as Tidewater Landing, shifting millions of dollars that was supposed to go to housing to the stadium itself. Our 12 News Roger Williams University poll found 44% of likely Democratic primary voters oppose the stadium financing plan, while only 35% of voters support it. So more voters are against it than for it. Why are they wrong?
Well, first of all, I don't think that they're getting all the information, and I think it's important to know that this program, this agreement, has the strongest taxpayer protections of any agreement that has been approved by the Commerce Corporation. Last dollar's in, no dollar goes in, no taxpayer dollars goes in until the project is completed. And we're also evaluating supply chain costs right now. I believe the cost of that project is going to come down. We'll find out when we get through negotiations. If it does, the taxpayers will be protected there. It's a 30-year agreement as well. The Tidewater project, and I'm not going to walk away from Pawtucket. The Tidewater project is consistent with our economic plan, investing monies in fisheries in Galilee, investing in Quonset, $63 million there in the offshore wind and the import-export.
But we're talking about Pawtucket and not the other areas, and your own consultants show that this project will not come close to paying for itself. It won't make the bond payments.
Well, first of all, the payments are going to be made because of the legislation that was passed in 2019 that covers, Pawtucket made the call that this is a project that they wanted, and I'm supporting that. And the fact of the matter is that there's already revenue that it could be shared into this project. That's not ideal, but it's going to give us time to do across the river, and we will complete that project. We will build that bridge over this troubled waters that everybody's so concerned about, and we will connect that in. And this is going to be a real focal point, not only for Pawtucket but the state of Rhode Island. I happen to know how to get this done. My opponents are going to would walk away from Pawtucket, and they would not fully understand the agreement that's in place, which is protecting taxpayers.
Let's hear from them, since we only
more
have
than any other commerce corporation.
We only have a few minutes left here. Ms.
You
support the project overall, but you would have voted against
Yes.
it. Are you walking away from the people of
No,
Pawtucket?
in fact, so here's the thing. Pawtucket deserves better. Our state deserves better. We have to move away from shiny object economic development and sit down and do the hard work. Do the hard work of building affordable housing for our people. Make sure that Pawtucket schools are rebuilt and reinvigorated and their teachers are supported. Make sure that we're addressing climate change and making sure that those jobs are available. That's what's going to turn Pawtucket's economy around and everybody else's economy around. That project became a bad project as soon as costs went up. And it should have been tabled, and we should be focusing on what's really important to the people of Rhode Island.
All right, I got 2 minutes left. Ms. Folks?
Yeah, I want to get on that too. Yeah.
Okay, of course. Ms. Folks?
Well, yeah, I would have voted no on the deal.
Right.
And I think I want to pick up on something the governor said. He said that the people of Rhode Island are not getting all the information. Well, Governor, you could be sharing all the information with us. There's a lot we'd like to know. And I think the job of the governor is to make sure that if he's going to do such an expensive deal, this deal, imagine what it could be funding in our schools. So if it's such a great deal, expose it all, share it with us, because that is the job of the governor, to make sure that we're making wise choices with our money. We are building the most expensive USL soccer stadium in this country. 10,000 seats and a lot of inattention to detail. And I call on the governor to just be more transparent, because if it's such a great deal, you wouldn't be hiding all the information.
Mr. Brown, 1 minute.
I think this Tidewater is a scandal that's unfolding right before our eyes. He cast the deciding vote, Governor McKee, to take $60 million of public money, our money, while people are struggling to make ends meet, struggling to afford housing, and gave it to a corporate developer whose lobbyists donate to his campaign. And then it came to light after the vote that all along he had a report that showed, you all discovered this, that showed that this deal is going to lose the state tens of millions of dollars. He has left Pawtucket in a terrible situation. And the question still in my mind is, Governor McKee, did you show Mayor Grebian and the Pawtucket City Council the report that you had that showed that this deal wasn't going to work, that it was going to lose money?
I have 20 seconds to give, and I'll give it to you.
20 seconds for that. But the taxpayers are protected on this project. We're going to move forward, and it's going to work, and it's consistent with what I've done, investments in Quonset, in Galilee, in East Providence, in Superman Building, in the Convention Center, in the State House, $47 million to repair the State House. We are going to keep people working, and we're going to invest it in a way that helps our economy.
All right.
Now,
we have to go to closing statements now. Each candidate has an opportunity to give a 1-minute closing statement, the order of which was drawn randomly prior to this debate. First up, Ms. Gorbea, your 60-second closing remarks.
Thank you, WPRI. Thank you, Ted and Tim. Thank you, audience and viewers. Right now, Rhode Island needs better leadership. We need to change our leadership. And I am running to be the governor that you need and deserve. Look, I have spent 30 years bringing people together to find innovative solutions for our hardest problems. When I was executive director of Housing Works Rhode Island, we built a coalition that then went and built 2,000 affordable homes. As your Secretary of State, I have changed the way our lobbying works so that things like 38 studios don't happen again. And I went ahead and invested in our elections infrastructure so that we could have safe and secure elections, even through a pandemic. I have protected your voting rights. I want to make sure that as your next governor, I go ahead and protect abortion rights, that I make sure that we invest in small businesses and child care and education and fix this housing crisis.
Thank you, Ms. Gorbea. Now, Mr. McKee, your 60-second Please, I'll give you an opportunity right at the end of the show. Mr. McKee, 60 seconds.
Yes, my wife Susan and I met in high school, public high school. My wife Susan is a career teacher. Our kids went to public schools. I happen to support public schools. I also am a governor that lives with his mother. For the past 18 months, I've been the governor of the state of Rhode Island in the biggest state of emergency in the history of the state of Rhode Island. And I provided leadership when it mattered most, going from last to first in vaccinations, reopening our economy faster than anywhere in the Northeast, the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the state of Rhode Island, with good paying jobs still available, and managed the largest surplus that the state has ever had, and invested those surplus dollars in $178 million in Eleanor Slater to fix that mess that I inherited. Money for schools, on and on and on. The numbers are real. In the meantime, signed an act on climate, made sure that gun safety laws were passed, also made sure that right to choose was protected. I'm asking for your vote. And we've just started.
Thank you, Mr.
Imagine
McKee.
what I got done
I
in
have
18
to stop
months,
you.
what we're going to do in 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. McKee.
Stop.
Your time is up. Mr. Brown, 60 seconds, closing remarks.
People are really struggling. And the reason is that the people in power over and over have funneled money to big corporations and the very rich while people are barely getting by, keeping a roof over their heads and over their children's heads. These are policy decisions. They're choices that the people in power have made. It doesn't have to be this way. With new leadership, we can change things. I've spent my whole life serving our communities, running organizations like City Year that provides tutors to the students in our schools. I take no corporate money from my campaign. As governor, I will be there just to work for the people. That means that we will end the corporate giveaways. I'll raise taxes on the richest 1% and fund our schools. We will enact a Green New Deal and Medicare for all and raise the minimum wage to $19 an hour. We can do all these things. We can bring real change to our state, and I ask for your support on September 13th.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And now, Ms. Folks, your 60-second closing remarks.
I'm really thrilled to be with all of you tonight, and I think what you've seen on this stage is the difference between old politics and new leadership. Politicians who are not willing to admit their mistakes and don't have plans that you can trust. To me, this is the status quo of meh. We deserve better. This election is not about us. This is about you. You having a leader who's willing to take new pathways and new thinking so that our children and our grandchildren can thrive in this state. I've led big change in my life and I've produced results. I was responsible and led the decision to get out of tobacco at CVS. We walked away from $2 billion in sales because we put people over profits. And we can get big things done in this state. Great health care, housing, jobs for the future. But if you remember one thing tonight, education, education, education. I will hold myself accountable to our teachers, to our parents, and to our children.
Thank
and
you,
I'm humbled and
Ms.
honored.
Folks.
Thank you.
And now to everybody here, applaud the candidates. And I want to thank everybody for watching this debate at home. We'll have complete coverage coming up on 12 News tonight at 10 and 11. And don't forget, primary day is September 13th, so get out and vote. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. Thank you very much for watching this debate, and have a great evening.